Hi everyone, Mike here. Just want to make a quick response video for street philosophy. If you remember last week, we did our first street philosophy question where I asked you what is nature. And if you look down the bottom of the screen there, you'll see that your responses all mostly fell into one bundle, and this is totally what usually happens. I've been doing this question for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, something like that. And most people, 70, 80, 90%, say roughly the same thing. If you ask them what nature is, they say trees, animals, birds, mountains, things like that. And if you ask them what's unnatural, they say basically anything touched by humans, anything humans touch. And if you read a little bit more into how people say these things, you'll notice that generally they mean by nature that it's pure, it's untouched, it's good. And if you think of how they define what's not nature, what's unnatural or non-nature, they generally mean it in a slightly negative way. Um, they mean that once humans touch the thing, it kind of becomes a little bit ruined. And they sometimes even mean it's just outright bad. A few people, and this is also pretty normal, answer the question more in what is a human nature type of way, which I like as well. And that's a pretty fun and interesting response. And oddly enough, maybe not surprisingly to a philosopher, they tend to break down in similar ways. If you ask people what human nature is, they tend to be a pretty sharp break, good and bad. And so that's also interesting. If you want to know what my view of nature is, since I asked you, you should be able to ask me. I have a slightly different view. For me, nature is everything. Everything. There is really, it's almost just a meaningless word. Nature is literally the universe. And this is kind of an old view and with a new twist on it. So, from the way back in the beginning of philosophy and the beginning of metaphysics, there were philosophers who thought about nature in this way. They didn't see humans as outside of nature or spoiling nature necessarily, more as just part of nature. And so that's kind of like my view. There's way more to it that I can't go into in a 5 minute video. If you want to chat, please, as always, I'm happy to set up a Zoom. But they didn't see humans as outside of nature. So if everything that humans might touch is nature, humans are nature, then also anything, from trees to, you see my list there, stars, smartphones, atoms, atom bombs, platypuses, and pollutions. All of that's nature to me. Now, some of it's bad. I don't think nuclear weapons are a good thing. I don't think pollution is a good thing. But I don't think they're unnatural. I think they're just a part of nature that's being created by humans. That's all. And so for me, it's also like an evolutionary view. Once you accept that what I see as a fact that humans are animals just like every other animal, then it's not much of a leap to imagine that, well, if a beaver builds a house or a human builds a house, really just the exact same thing happened. And so that's the basics. There's way more to it, and I could talk for hours on this. But there's also an ethical and political outcome to our normal split that I wanted to just bring up to you and have you think about it. So oftentimes what happens with our standard definition for 70 to 80% of people that nature is like out there in the trees and the woods and the animals freely untouched by humans, almost everywhere that people live, especially cities, is considered to be not nature. And it's kind of treated accordingly, treated badly, like, treated like shit, honestly. Most people don't think of the city as nature or much less part of our environment. They definitely don't think of poor areas or uh, places where a lot of people of color live in the same way as they think of a national park. To me, it's just all nature, and all of it needs to be treated with respect. The reason we have such huge problems with pollution and climate change and things like that is because we have this weird split, I think, where some places we protect and glorify and think are beautiful, and some places we really just don't care and we treat them really badly. I think that's just a bad way ethically, a bad way politically, and definitely a bad way when it comes to climate change to think about this problem. So there's a couple of reasons there why I hold this view. I'm happy to chat with you about it. Happy to argue with you about it if you even want. Um, And if you want to set up a Zoom to talk about this, please just contact me. Happy to do it. See you next week.